adults live out their lives, at work, in college classrooms and dorm rooms, in diversity training sessions at the office, online, or simply consuming the latest television series, they realize that they are considered to be extremists, particularly if they speak up. Not only is mainstream culture moving farther away from Christian beliefs, but it also seems to be weakening and fragmenting. There is enormous dissatisfaction with the political establishments, and people are willing to vote for candidates, both right and left, that even 10 years ago would have been considered too extreme. We have resurgent socialism, as well as blood and soil populism. U.S. life expectancy has dropped 3 years in a row, an unprecedented phenomenon outside of wartime. There is agreement that loneliness and isolation, suicide and addiction are growing alarmingly as community and communities break down. In this new situation, many of the older Christian models of cultural engagement or political theology seem obsolete. One was pietism, the view that believers should be about winning souls and building up the church and not about trying to be Christians in politics. But that approach assumes a well-functioning society that doesn't need Christians to support the common good. If society is breaking down, how can you love your neighbor without getting politically involved? And what if your culture comes to define your soul winning as a politically illegitimate act? How do you avoid politics then? Another Christian approach was that of the religious right. It focused on a number of policy issues tied to traditional Christian doctrines about how people should live, though it singled out only some, matters of abortion, marriage, and religious freedom. It never spent time thinking out the implications of Christian teaching on matters of race, economics, or justice. Then it sought through electoral politics to put people into power who promoted those chosen policies. There was great optimism and hope for this approach beginning in the mid-1970s and lasting almost 30 years. But both in the arena of law, for example the Windsor and Obergefell decisions, and that of political opinion, we have seen an overwhelming wave of indifference or antipathy to historical Christian understandings of sex, gender, and marriage. This, tied to the now steep drop in religious affiliation and church attendance, at least 66% of all Christian churches are now in decline, spells a shrinking voter base for the religious right. Younger Christians have turned away from these approaches led by those of my generation and are looking elsewhere. One option has been a kind of new monasticism that rightly promotes much stronger and thicker Christian community, but also largely gives up on any hope of influencing the civic order. Other approaches, however, run the risk of getting caught up in the broader political polarization and becoming mere tools of it, just one part of a left or right political coalition. For example, we may see the development of both blue evangelicalism and red evangelicalism online. The former talks about racial and economic justice, but is quiet about the biblical teaching on subjects such as abortion, sexuality, and gender. The latter condemns sexual immorality and secularism in the strongest terms, but grows silent when its political allies fan the flames of racial resentment toward immigrants. When the church, in the name of political power, allies and aligns too much with the current secular left or right, it is sapped of both spiritual power and credibility with non-believers. Theologically, both political poles are suspect, because one makes an idol out of individual freedom, and the other makes an idol out of race and nation, blood and soil. In both, something created and earthly is deified. Extreme progressivism detaches individuals from community and history and any concept of virtue, but the nationalism and racism that might replace it are no answer to it. If you are looking for a way forward, I can think of no better starting point than this audiobook. There are many things I love about this volume, but above all, I love how Jake Meador is so accessible as he lays out a path that avoids not only problems